In the last episode, I received this comment asking me to go into more detail about the steering wheel. So I thought I'd kick off this episode telling you guys everything you wanted to know about the steering wheel and how to upgrade it even further. So starting on eBay. This is how you do power searches on eBay. Here in the search field, enter in whatever it is that you're looking for. In this case, Chevy steering wheel 82. I just find that's a good year. You click on the Buy It Now button, and then you sort by price plus shipping lowest first. And this will get you the best bargain on the thing that you're looking for. So we can scroll through here and see horns, stuff like that. But hey, there's a steering wheel that would work. It's kind of ugly. And then scrolling down a little farther, we get to this one, which is right here. So it's a nice looking steering wheel. It does give you a lot of visibility for your gauges, but it's got that Chevy emblem on the horn. And who wants that on their GMC Motorhome? So if you click there, you can see there's just the horn piece, and that will just plug right in. And then you have yourself a GMC steering wheel like this one, only this one costs 80 bucks and the other one is 40 when you combine those two items. So it's a lot cheaper. This is the one that I've actually purchased. I paid, I think, $75 for mine, so a little bit less than what they're charging here. And it's from a 1982 to 93 Chevy S10 Blazer. So that's what you're looking for if you want the same one that I have. And then you got to get this horn. If you want a leather-wrapped steering wheel, search for Oldsmobile Cutlass steering wheel and scroll down. Same painful process there, just looking for the one that you want. But the leather-wrapped ones are hard to come by. They pop up once in a while, but currently there's only this one and this one listed on eBay. Okay, so now that you've purchased the steering wheel, what you're going to need to do is install it, and that means you need to remove the original wheel. So to do that, you're just going to pop this horn off, and I've already disassembled this slightly, so that's the wire for the horn. We'll get more into that here in a minute. But the next thing you need to do is there's this retaining C-clip, that star-looking thing, and you can use needle nose pliers to remove it. It's a little bit of a chore, but I've already sort of removed it, so I can just pick it off by hand here. And then you'll need to put your socket wrench on that large nut there and get that off. And now you're going to be stuck because that steering wheel is firmly planted onto the spline of the steering shaft. So what you need is a steering wheel puller. And I didn't feel like purchasing that tool, so I fabricated one of my own, which is what you see here. So let me install this and I'll show you how it works. You can see I have the two outer threaded rods, and those are threaded into the special steering wheel pulling mount down there in the steering wheel. And then the center bolt has a nut on the back side there, and it is lined up with the shaft. So all I need to do is basically put a wrench on that nut to hold it in place, start tightening down the bolt here, and that will push on the shaft, pulling the steering wheel right off those splines. Just like that. And so there is the splined steering shaft. And this piece of plastic right here is actually just the insulator tube for the horn spring assembly, which is this thing right here. So that just slides into there, and then this 3D printed piece that I've manufactured holds the spring, and so it holds the slider. That part right there slides around on a ring of brass down in the bottom there. And that's how you activate the horn. If I touched this end here to the shaft there, it would activate the horn. But I can't demonstrate that because the baby is asleep. So this square-headed bolt here threads into the steering wheel pulling mount that we were just using. So when I'm not trying to pull the steering wheel, it just threads in there, and then it holds the spring nicely in place like that. All right, let's go upgrade this steering wheel even further. Here's some leather that was salvaged from an old leather sofa, and I used this piece of Cordura nylon just to get an idea for how far I want to wrap around that steering wheel, and that got me the thickness. Then I used a paper template here, just some wrapping paper, some packaging paper, to figure out exactly the shape that I need to wrap the steering wheel around that funky portion of the padding. So after I'd done all that, I created this loop. And you can see that the loop fits nicely around the steering wheel. I had to do it in 4 pieces just because of the maximum length that I had on these scraps of leather from the sofa. So now what I need to do is sew bias or a seam like that all the way around. I'm doing that right there on my industrial sewing machine. And this is the moment when you really need an industrial sewing machine. You can see I'm about to sew through 4 layers of leather here. So that is quite the task. And mistakes were made. You see this line of stitching there at my thumbnail? That's what you just saw me sewing a second ago. And it turns out that my seam allowance was not enough. So I had to redo that. And thankfully I'll be able to hide this on the back side of the steering wheel. I can't feel it, so no harm, no foul, should not be visible. Now all that's left to do is to stitch this onto the steering wheel by hand. So this is the tedious part. And I'm going to start by putting these tacks in the corners and at the ends here. So we got 4 tacks to make, and then the main stitching will happen. At this point now, I know it's going to work, and I'm pretty excited about it. So you can see I got the stitches, the tacks into all 4 corners. Now, in order to accomplish that, I did have to put a little bar tack across the corners there, just 3 stitches, and that allowed me to cinch that tight. That's quite a bit of force going through that stitch, and I was tearing out the leather when I first tried it. So that was the solution there. So now it's just the tedious hand stitching. Let's get to work, and once I've done it for a few minutes, I'll show you guys exactly what I'm doing. I've blunted this needle just so that it does not catch the leather as I'm doing this, because I really don't need to punch through the leather. See, I'm just catching these stitches like that, pulling the needle through and connecting to the stitch on the other side. And you can see I just work my way around the steering wheel, and you end up with a pattern that looks something like that. Whew, this is slow going work. So I've moved out here into the sunshine just because things are easier to see, and you can tell what I'm doing here. I basically just stitch a length of it, and then I cinch it up tight, just like lacing up your shoelaces. Alright, I've stitched from here up and around to there, and I can't even tell you how good this feels. Like, it is just so awesome. But I've got 3 big problems. The first one we already talked about before, and that is the white stitch marks from where I messed up that seam, and I can feel them now that it's cinched tight onto the steering wheel. They're definitely something that I'd be playing with as I drove. The other problem is the fact that I have a gap. You see the gap there in between the 2 sides, and that's there because I didn't leave enough material to fully wrap around the steering wheel. So I'm trying to cinch it tight, and that's taking me a very long time. Like, it took way longer than I care to admit to sew this far by hand. And it's because I'm having to sort of like grip it together and try to sew, just try to pull those seams tight, and it's just not working. And then the final problem, and this is the big one, I just had a blowout. So you can see my stitching here failed. And so I don't know how to correct that. It would be ugly trying to like stitch it by hand through the original holes or something like that. So I've got 3, actually almost 4 big reasons why I should start over. This is my first one. Hopefully the next one will go a lot quicker now that I've learned all these lessons. I want to get it right because my hands are going to be touching the steering wheel for many, many hours to come. Some other tools of the trade that I'm using to complete this project. This is a small rotary cutter, and I just got this one on eBay. It was cheap. And I like the small wheel for leather because it allows me to cut into the corners, into the inside corners, without accidentally cutting beyond the lines. This is a nicer cutter, like a brand name, that allows you to sort of retract it so you don't cut yourself. But the larger wheel doesn't cut into corners quite as well. And then, of course, I've got this metal straight edge that I just sort of line up and then just sort of trace down the straight edge and make your cuts. I think I'm off to a good start here with the second one. I've made these seams smaller and tighter. Compare that to the size of the original one, and that did show through. It pushed through the outside of the leather when I stitched it to the wheel, so having these smaller seams will be nice. Also, I've shortened up the loop so that it's now a stretch fit, more of a stretch fit to get it onto the steering wheel. And that'll be good because when I was sewing the first one, I actually had a bit of slop, like it was getting loose and I was having to bunch it up. So I think tighter is better in this case. Now, I have sort of test fit this by hand, and it looks like it's going to be pretty floppy right through here across this section. And that floppiness is caused by the reduced seam allowance here. So originally I designed it for twice the seam allowance, and decreasing the seam allowance worked perfectly for, you know, the steering wheel portion, but this spoke portion, I don't know why, but it's just really floppy through there. So I have two options. The first is I can unstitch this entire seam all the way around, and that does have to be one continuous seam for the steering wheel stitching to work. So that's just a whole lot of work that I don't really want to do, and there's no guarantee that I will get the fitment right the second time either. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the gap with some foam. So what I have here is some closed cell foam that's harder, and then some soft urethane foam. And I just had these because I make bags, so I had the material sitting around. And over here, you can see I've already got the sort of installed underneath. And so there's the softer foam and the harder foam underneath. And yeah, that'll be a nice cushion for my hands to rest on, just like this. And there it is, all completed. I can't even tell you guys how comfortable this is. It took me quite a few hours, but in the end, I'm really happy I did it. Now, obviously, if I was doing this professionally or like for some sort of a show car, I would have done the pattern again a third time so that I didn't have to add the padding. I kind of like the padding. I do like resting my hands on it, but it's not quite as nice, not quite as tight everywhere, although it feels great. But yeah, obviously for a professional look, I would not have added the foam. Let's take a minute to talk about DIY and why somebody would spend so many hours to wrap a steering wheel in leather. Like you guys, I derive great joy in knowing that I made something, especially using my hands. And the problem these days is that China just saturates the market with everything we can possibly think of to buy. So there's almost nothing that I want that I can't just buy a ready-made version of it from China. And that's not the case with this steering wheel. I went looking for a leather-wrapped steering wheel for this 1978 GMC Motorhome, and I couldn't find it. So making it was my only option, and it turned out to be my best option because I get to customize it so that it suits me. Yeah, so this whole motorhome is actually the ultimate DIY project in my eyes. You cannot buy something today that's as cool or as well made as this motorhome. So remaking it will give me the best possible motorhome that I can get, because you just can't buy something like this unless Tesla starts making them, right? This was so ahead of its time. Fiberglass and aluminum, like they just got around to making like Ford trucks out of aluminum, the bodywork. So the fact that this was made 40 years ago just boggles my brain. Like it was immensely ahead of its time, and they stopped making them, and nobody else has stepped up to the plate to make something like this. So this is the perfect opportunity for a DIYer to just, you know, pour their heart and soul into a great project, and that's what I'm doing. So let's talk a little bit more about what makes this motorhome so special, and then we'll get into some more of the details of the things that I've been doing lately. Last time, we talked about how front-wheel drive combined with the front-to-back tandem rear wheels allowed GMC to make the frame super low and wide, thus creating a vehicle the likes of which had never been seen before. There were a total of 12,921 GMC motorhomes made, 3,200 of which were called trans modes. You see, GMC didn't just want to make motorhomes, they wanted to make a new kind of vehicle for all types of applications, like ambulances, airport shuttles, or the famous EM50 urban assault vehicle. GMC was literally trying to make a new class of vehicle, which is why they put so much effort into the design. But the engine wasn't specially built for the motorhome. In fact, the entire front end came from the Oldsmobile Toronado, which stands alone as the only production front-wheel drive muscle car. The 1973 through 1976 models of the motorhome had an emissions-hobbled Olds 455 with only 190 horsepower. For context, that engine is capable of 400 horsepower. For 1977 and 78, the engine was an Oldsmobile 403 with 185 horsepower. If you want to see something really cool, check out the link in the description to a guy who is in the process of putting a 6.5 turbo diesel into his rig. Enough about engines. Let's get back to talking about the living space. So this is the plumbing vent line that was hidden behind that wall panel, and for some reason stuck to it is this duct tape, and I'm peeling that off, and it's still sticky. Like, how old is that duct tape? I don't know, but it's more similar to gaffer's tape that you would buy these days. Like, you can't find duct tape this high quality anymore, and I remember using stuff similar to this when I was a kid, so I don't know. It's interesting. Even duct tape, they don't make it like they used to. Okay, making good progress on the deconstruction. The cabinet from above the range has been removed, and also the one that sat above the sofa. Really don't like those because they block the windows. But the big cabinet that got removed here is the refrigerator cabinet. And this is interesting because the earlier models, like the 76s and those, they had a removable access panel here so you could get to the back of the refrigerator. But on mine, 1978, that panel is just, it's solid. So they don't have a screen over the vents here, which is strange. The louvers are just supposed to be their own screen, I guess. And you can see that the bees like came in, and we got bees nests, or I guess they're hornets nests technically. And also I think that the rat probably squeezed his way in through those louvers as well. And man, that rat did a number. He must have lived in here for a while because those are all rat turds. And that's just super gross. I forgot to document it when I was taking care of it, but this drainage pan for the shower was just filled with rat's nest material. So up under there, that's where the rat was living. Alright, so here's the current status. My wife came in here and cleaned up all of the rat turds, so thankfully I don't have to work in filth anymore. She also did some cleanup on the rotten plywood that I had chipped up, so now I've identified where all the rotten areas are and I can cut out around that, and I'm just going to patch in some new 3/4 inch plywood. Nobody's ever going to step back here or be walking. This will all be covered by the bed, so a patch job will be just fine back here. And it's so much easier than trying to remove these tubs and get underneath there. So that's the easy fix there. And the bathroom needs to be resurfaced. The outer wall needs to be redone with the whole bathroom. On the other side of the hall here, I'm not really going to touch these cabinets too much. I am going to reface all of the drawers, and that includes the drawers and the cabinets here as well. So you see that the stove is missing, and the fridge is missing, and of course all of the furniture is missing. So I've been getting rid of a lot of things lately. They're doing neighborhood trash hauling for free, so I'm tossing a bunch of the cabinets and carpet that came out of the motorhome. So this is Dan, and I bought the rig from him to begin with, and he stopped by today to pick up all the old furniture because I'm getting rid of it, and he restores these things to stock.
And if not, I'll find somebody that uses it because you shouldn't be throwing this stuff away.
Yeah,
because it's too old and smelly.
It's hard to come by, right?
You can't come by it.
Yeah, unobtainium.
Unobtainium. That's right.
So Dan is taking all of the furniture, and he's got the awning up there too. There's the other legs to the awning. So now I've got a nice clean rig to start doing the work on. And this is what the carcass of a once beautiful GMC looks like. I drove 2 hours so that I could pull the muffler off that generator back there. And over here on this side, I had to dig a hole so that I could get to that step, but I got the step off, so that's nice. I had to drive 2 hours to get these parts, but they are free, and it's pretty hard to source them from other places, so I think it was worth it. Anybody who thought that they'd seen a disgusting one of these has not been into this one. It's like a pack rat hell in here, an actual pack rat hell. It's so gross. I can't even describe the smell. But, yep, there it is. And that's all the time I have today to pull parts off of this rig. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to get the gas struts that attach the bumper on these earlier models. These are super nice because they're basically shock absorbers for your bumper. And you can see here where this bumper got pushed all the way back to where it was scratching the fiberglass there. It also broke the fiberglass right there. So that was hit pretty hard right there. But the gas in the strut pushed that thing back to where it sits normally, and you can't even tell that it was ever in a crash, except for, of course, the cracks. So mine doesn't have the struts. It has these brackets, but you know, I just don't have time. Too bad. Anyway, no matter what happens, even if you crash with the struts, you're still going to have damage. So I guess it's not the worst thing that I don't get to put those on my rig. And this is the bracketry that comes on the 78 model instead of that gas strut. And this is what I ended up getting from the motorhome. We got the T panels to cover up the the wheels back there, the little wheel well goes between the two big wheels. We got a step, you saw me taking that off. These are the fender liners for right up under the front wheels there. For whatever reason, those got removed from this and lost at some point. We got a 2 battery tray. Now this is for an early model. Mine's a later model, 78. So it only needs a single battery tray, but I can always put like, extra oil or something. I can store something else there on the battery tray. And also this dashboard rug cover. Now that's pretty gross. I'm gonna have to really clean the heck out of it to hopefully rehabilitate it. We'll see if that's salvageable. Yeah, so these could be quite expensive if I bought them all new, but they all need to be reworked. You can see that this one was involved in that crash, so it's got some damage to the fiberglass, so I'm gonna have to do some repair on that. Now the flexible port here that mounts to the bottom is missing. Thankfully, on my motorhome, I had just these parts, so I should be able to adapt between the two of them. I should have a working body panel there. And of course, there's the muffler to go on the Onan generator, and it will replace the muffler that's currently installed, and it's broken. See, it's missing the tailpipe. Here at GMCRVparts.com, I could have purchased all of the parts that I pulled off that motorhome, but I would have paid $1,845, and I don't think that includes shipping. So $2,000 is what I saved myself. Now that does include the steering wheel, so minus $100 because they want $300 for that steering wheel, and that's not even leather wrapped. Also, this Onan generator here, they have a stainless steel version with a catalytic converter, so it takes down the exhaust fumes as well. So that's not really a fair comparison. But yeah, the bottom line is I just saved myself a lot of money. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.